You were just a kid, but you had to stay calm when the adults yelled. You had to clean up the messes you didn't make. You had to smile even when you were scared. No one told you to grow up, but no one protected your childhood either. So you learned to be strong, to keep secrets, to put others first, to survive in spaces that never felt safe. And now, you're tired, not because you've done too much, but because you've carried what no child should ever have to carry. Carl Jung once said, "Nothing has a stronger influence than the unlived life of a parent on their child." And if you were forced to grow up too fast, that unlived life became yours to hold. This video is for you, for the adult who never got to be a child. Not every child gets to be a child. Some are born into chaos, into silence, into the space between broken adults, where someone has to hold things together. So they do. They sense moods before they speak. They apologize for needs they haven't even voiced. They grow up fast, not because they want to, but because they have to. Carl Jung believed that when a child carries emotional responsibility too early, their psyche splits. One part becomes the adult, the caretaker, the strong one, the problem solver. The other part, the child, goes underground, into the shadow, waiting, but never fully gone. Because no matter how strong they become, there's a part of them that never got to fall apart, that never got to ask for help, that still aches when no one's watching. Growing up too fast isn't a badge of honor. It's a wound with manners, a trauma that looks like maturity. And long after childhood ends, the pattern stays in how they love, how they work, how they carry everyone but themselves. This video isn't about blame. It's about recognition of what you became when the world asked too much, too soon. And in the next few minutes, we'll explore the quiet traits they carry. Those who were forced to grow up before they were ready. The first sign: they take care of everyone, but they don't know how to receive. They remember your birthday. They sense your silence. They show up before you even ask. And everyone says, "They're so strong. They're always there. They have such a big heart." But deep down, they're tired. They're empty. They're aching for someone to hold them, the way they hold the world. Carl Jung believed that when a child is forced to meet emotional needs too early, they form an identity around being needed. It becomes their safety, their purpose, their mask. Because once upon a time, that's how they survived. They weren't allowed to fall apart, so they learned to stay composed. They weren't allowed to ask, so they became the giver. But now, as adults, they struggle to receive a compliment, a favor, love, not because they don't want it, but because it feels unfamiliar, unsafe, uncontrolled, and sometimes even shameful. Because when your childhood taught you that your value is in what you do for others, you forget that you're worthy even when you're not useful. So they give, and give, and give, until one day, they realize they don't know how to be held, because they were too busy holding everyone else. And it doesn't stop in relationships. They overfunction at work. They become the dependable one. They say yes when they want to say no. They apologize for needing rest. They feel guilty for relaxing, because somewhere along the way, they equated care with control, and rest with failure. If you're this person, this isn't your fault. You didn't become a caretaker because you wanted power. You became one because no one ever offered you care when you needed it most. But today, you're allowed to rest. You're allowed to receive. You're allowed to be held without earning it. The second sign: they seem independent, capable, self-contained. They rarely ask for help. They make things happen on their own. They don't need anyone. At least, that's what it looks like. But inside, they're exhausted. They crave support. They wish just once someone would step in, without being asked, without being earned. Carl Jung taught that the psyche builds defenses not out of strength, but out of fear. And for those who had to grow up too fast, independence wasn't a choice. It was a response. When the people meant to care for them were emotionally absent, they learned that needing others was dangerous, disappointing, painful, So they shut that part down. The part that longs. The part that reaches. The part that trusts. And in its place, they built something solid, strong, impressive, but also lonely. Because when your entire identity is, I've got this, there's no room to admit, I don't. So they crave support in silence. They fantasize about being held, helped, seen, but feel guilty the moment it's offered. Because they don't know how to be the one receiving, without feeling weak, without feeling wrong, without feeling like a burden. They'll say, I'm fine. I don't want to bother anyone. I'll figure it out. But deep down, they're waiting for someone who sees through the mask and stays. Because what they really long for isn't attention. It's relief. To rest. To exhale. To not be on all the time. But here's the truth. Needing others doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. And the most independent people are often just the ones who had to be. Now, they're just waiting. For a moment. Safe enough. To put the armor down. And if that's you, your strength is real. But your softness matters too. You don't have to carry everything alone. Not anymore. The third sign. They feel responsible. For things that were never theirs to carry. A parent's sadness. A partner's anger. A friend's disappointment. Even when they didn't cause it. They carry it. Try to fix it. Make it better. And when things fall apart, they blame themselves. Silently. Automatically. Carl Jung believed that when a child is pulled into emotional roles too early, they internalize guilt as if it's love. They confuse responsibility with connection. Being helpful with being loved. So they become the peacekeeper, the caretaker, the one who knows better, even when they're still learning who they are. They learn to say, it's okay. Don't worry about me. I'll handle it. Even when they're hurting. Even when it's not their mess to clean up. And that doesn't end when childhood does. As adults, they feel like it's their job to manage emotions. They didn't create. They over-apologize. They walk on eggshells. They sense tension in the room and take it on as their fault. They'll replay conversations in their mind, blame themselves for someone else's silence, feel anxious, even when no one is upset. Because deep down, their nervous system still believes, if I don't fix it, I'll be left. Their sense of safety is tied to keeping others comfortable, even at their own expense. But what they don't realize is, this instinct to fix everything was born in a home where no one was fixing them, where being helpful meant being accepted, where taking care of others was the only way to not be abandoned. And now, even when they're surrounded by kind people, that reflex remains. But here's the truth. It's not your job to carry what isn't yours. And it never was. You were just too young to know the difference between love and emotional labor. But now, you can learn to put it down. Not because you don't care, but because you finally care enough to include yourself. You deserve to feel safe, even when others are not okay. You deserve relationships where love doesn't come with a burden attached. The fourth sign, they struggle to relax. Even when everything's fine. The room is quiet. The bills are paid. No one's upset. And yet, they can't exhale. Something inside stays on edge. Waiting. Scanning. Tense for no reason they can explain. Carl Jung believed that the body carries what the mind can't fully process. And for those who grew up in unstable environments, stillness never felt safe. Silence meant something was about to happen. Calm meant a storm was coming. Relaxation meant vulnerability. So their nervous system never learned to settle. Even in peace, they brace for impact. It's not just mental. It's physical. Somatic memory. The body remembering what the child had to survive. And so now, they sit in safe rooms with anxious hearts. They go on vacation and can't unwind. They hear, you can rest now. But don't know how. Because somewhere inside, the body still believes. It's not safe to let go. They check their phone obsessively. Overthink their last conversation. They plan, schedule, micromanage. Not out of control, but out of survival. Because if they stop, the feelings catch up. And those feelings were never processed, just buried. So they stay busy, hyper-functional, productive. But here's the truth. Rest is not a luxury. It's a right. And for those who were forced to grow up too fast, learning to relax isn't laziness. It's healing. It's reteaching the nervous system. You are not in danger. You don't have to earn peace. You don't need to suffer to deserve softness. True rest starts small. A breath, a pause, a moment of stillness without guilt. And slowly, the body begins to believe. You're safe now. You don't have to flinch at silence. You don't have to fill every space with effort. You're allowed to be held by moments that ask nothing of you. The fifth sign. They can't remember much of their childhood. Not just details, but whole seasons, whole years. Gone, blurry, missing. When others talk about school plays, birthday parties, childhood joy, they smile politely, but inside, there's silence. Carl Jung believed that what the conscious mind cannot hold, the unconscious will bury. Not to forget, but to protect. Because for some children, childhood wasn't a time of freedom. It was a time of pressure, responsibility, vigilance. So instead of storing memories, their mind stored instructions, how to be helpful, how to stay invisible, how to keep others calm. Fun was replaced with hyper-awareness. Play with survival. They didn't learn how to ride bikes or build forts. They learned how to read moods, how to walk on eggshells, how to stop crying because no one was listening anyway. And now, as adults, they struggle to recall those early years. Not because they weren't important, but because they were overwhelming. Their memory isn't broken. It was trying to shield them. This is what psychology calls dissociation, the mind's way of pulling back from pain too big to hold. And sometimes, the price of survival is forgetting how we got here. But here's what you need to know. What you forgot wasn't lost. It was waiting for a moment safe enough to return. Not to relive, but to finally be remembered, with compassion, not through fear, but through peace. Because memory doesn't just live in the mind, it lives in the body, in the way your shoulders tighten when someone raises their voice, in the way your breath shortens when you hear conflict. So if you can't remember, it's okay. You're not empty. You're not disconnected. You were just busy surviving. And as you heal, the memories may come back. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But gently. In fragments. In colors. In waves. And this time, you get to meet them not as a child, but as the adult who finally knows how to stay. The sixth sign. They struggle with being nurtured, even when they crave it. They want to be held, to be asked, "How are you really?" To be brought tea when they're tired, to be seen without effort. And yet when it happens, they freeze, they deflect, they minimize. They say, "You didn't have to." They laugh it off. Or worse, they feel guilty. Carl Jung wrote that the self becomes divided when a child adapts to survive instead of receiving love freely. And for those who had to be the strong one, nurturing doesn't feel like comfort. It feels like confusion, because love once had strings, or it came with conditions, or it simply never came at all. So they built a self around doing, giving, earning, staying useful to be loved. They became the one who always checks in, the one who gives gifts, the one who listens deeply, but never lets themselves be held. Because somewhere along the way, they learned, if I receive, I owe something back. So when someone offers care, without expecting anything in return, it doesn't register as safe. It registers as unfamiliar. Because when your inner child never got to just be held, your adult self doesn't know how to relax into love. Even as they long for softness, they struggle to stay present in it. They look away. They change the subject. They make a joke just to escape the intimacy of being cared for. Not because they don't want it, but because receiving wasn't part of the survival script. But here's what's true. You're allowed to receive, without proving, without pleasing, without guilt. Being cared for doesn't make you selfish. It makes you seen. And the love that's meant for you will never feel like debt. It will feel like rest, like trust, like the part of you that always gave, finally learning how to receive. The seventh sign. They don't know what it's like to be fully rested. Yes, they sleep. Yes, they take days off. Yes, they sit still. But inside, they're still working, still bracing, still on, even in silence. Their mind rehearses. Their heart scans. Their body waits for something to go wrong. Carl Jung believed that when the ego forms around survival, it builds an identity rooted in doing, not being. And for the child who had to stay alert to stay safe, rest wasn't an option. It was a risk. So they became adults who are always one step ahead. Emotionally prepared. Hyper-aware. Always responsible. Always available. But never truly off. They say, "I'm fine," even when they're not. They keep going even when they're tired. They hold space even when they're empty. And the worst part? They don't know any other way. Because calm feels foreign. Stillness feels unsafe. Rest feels unearned. They wake up tired. They rest, but never recharge. Because even when the body slows down, the nervous system stays on high alert. It's not laziness they fear. It's being unprepared, unready for something to fall apart again. So they fill the calendar, answer one more email, do just one more thing, to prove they deserve to exist. But here's the truth. You are not here to perform your value. You are allowed to exist even when you do nothing, even when you're soft, even when you're not holding the world together. And if you've forgotten what rest feels like, maybe it's because you never truly had permission to rest. So this is your permission. To pause. To breathe. To stop managing everything. And start reclaiming yourself. You don't have to prove anything to be held. You don't have to earn peace. It's already yours. What connects the over-functioning, the emotional guilt, the inability to rest, with a childhood that ended before it began? Carl Jung believed that when a child is forced to become something too soon, that part of the psyche fractures. It forms a version of self that looks strong on the outside, but is rooted in adaptation, not authenticity. This is what Jung called the false self, the identity built to survive, to soothe others, to hold chaos, to replace what was missing. But this self isn't who you really are. It's who you had to become, because your environment didn't give you the space to simply be a child. Instead of being seen, you were needed. Instead of being supported, you became support. Instead of being asked how you felt, you were told what to do. You became what psychology calls the parentified child. The one who stepped in where the adults stepped out. The one who became wise beyond their years, but lost the right to ever just fall apart. And that child, who skipped the softness of being held, grew into an adult who doesn't know how to ask for help, without feeling shame. Their false self looks like success, but it feels like exhaustion. They smile. They organize. They fix everything. But deep down, they're still waiting for someone to say, "You don't have to hold it all anymore." And when no one ever says that, they keep holding it. Worse, they begin to believe that they are the role they perform. This is where Jung introduces another concept. The shadow, the parts of ourselves that we exile because they were never accepted in the first place. Vulnerability, softness, needs, tears, all sent into the unconscious because they were too much, or inconvenient, or never mirrored by the adults around them. And the person grows up, polished, functional, and untouched on the surface, but internally divided. This is what creates the shadow adult. The grown version of the child, who never got to feel safe. They love deeply, but fear dependency. They succeed outwardly, but collapse inwardly. They can help everyone, but can't let anyone truly help them. Because when the false self is all you've ever known, anything else feels dangerous. Even peace, even love, even rest. So what's the way out? It starts with a question. Who am I when I'm not fixing everything? It continues with an invitation to turn inward, to reconnect with the self that never stopped waiting, but was buried beneath the performance. Healing isn't about destroying the strong self. It's about softening it, letting it take a breath, letting the part of you that had to grow up too fast finally be seen. Because the child in you didn't need perfection. They needed presence. They didn't need answers. They needed arms. And now, as the adult, you have the power to give that back to yourself. To choose presence over performance. To choose compassion over control. To choose rest not as a reward, but as a right. This is how the false self becomes conscious. How the shadow adult begins to heal. And how the parentified child finally feels safe enough to be held. Not because they're doing anything, but because they've always deserved to be. So if you saw yourself in these words, if even one line felt like something you've never told anyone, then maybe this wasn't just a video. Maybe it was a remembering. A remembering of who you became, to survive what you couldn't control. You were never weak. You were never too much. You were just asked to be strong, before you were ready. And you answered that call, not because you wanted to grow up so fast, but because no one else stepped in. So you did. You held others. You carried burdens. You stayed calm, while breaking inside. You smiled through moments that should have held you. You made sure everyone else felt safe, while never truly feeling safe yourself. But now you're older, and maybe safer, and maybe just maybe ready to let some of that go. Not all at once, not perfectly, not dramatically, but gently, slowly, with grace. Because healing doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means remembering the version of you that never got a chance to fully exist. The soft one, the playful one, the one that didn't have to know everything, or fix everyone, or be the adult in every room. That version is still there, not lost, just waiting for you to say, you don't have to carry it anymore. I'm here now. And I finally know, you deserve to be a child too. Maybe that part of you never got to scream, or cry, or rest, or ask for help without being told you were dramatic. Maybe you were taught that strength meant silence, that love meant earning it, that peace came only after everything else was perfect. But those were lies. The truth is, you deserved gentleness all along. You deserved presence without performance, love without labor, safety without strategy. And while you may not have gotten that back then, you can give it to yourself now. In how you speak to your body, in how you let yourself rest, in how you soften your expectations, in how you finally say, I need, and let someone meet it. Because every moment you choose compassion over control, rest over reaction, honesty over hyper-functioning, is a moment your inner child gets to heal. You don't have to rush this. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're just walking a path that no one ever showed you how to walk. And somehow, you're still here, still growing, still opening. And that is strength. Not the kind that performs, but the kind that remains, even after the storm. Thank you for staying, not just through this video, but through yourself, through every version of you that grew up too fast and still came back to listen. If something here felt like truth, like a memory without words, like someone finally saw the part of you that's always been holding it all together, then you already know. This wasn't just information. It was recognition, a reflection of the strength you carry, the softness you buried, the wholeness that's always been waiting to return. You don't need to rush your healing. You don't need to go back and fix your childhood. You only need to meet yourself gently right here. The strong one, the tired one, the one who never got to ask for help. You're safe now. You're seen now. And if you ever forget, this space will be here. Quiet, honest, unconditional, waiting just as you are. Until then, be soft with yourself. You've carried so much. Now let life carry you.